Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending my session. It's a privilege to be back here and talking to you today. And I'm going to go really fast, and so you have to make sure that lunch is not weighing you down. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. I've been based in Hong Kong for coming up to 30 years. And I have a 30-plus year career in senior HR professional positions, regional APAC, and global positions as well. When I had oversight over Citrix Systems, Juniper Networks, and Rockwell, particularly when Juniper Networks was growing in Asia, in India. We started with 16 employees, and by the time I left the organization, we had about 1,800 or 2,000 in India, in Bangalore. So I've been to 12 cities in India, and I love being here and really especially appreciate the spiritual opening this morning. I left corporate about a year ago to set up my own executive coaching practice, and I'm a heavy AI user. In fact, right now I have an AI note taker listening to what I'm saying. I also use, in my coaching, I use AI note taking, I use sentiment analysis, and I'm starting to introduce various client workflows. And in my spare time, I'm completing a doctorate of business administration in the efficacy of virtual and in-person coaching. And I'm married with 4 kids, including triplets, who were born 3.5 months premature in 2004 when we had about 50 to 60 employees in Bangalore. So I have headcount issues everywhere, even in my family. But I do want to say that my relationship with the employees at Juniper changed when I went to the Infant Jesus Shrine, and the babies were in the hospital in the NICU for 3.5 months. And one of the employees in Bangalore took me to the Infant Jesus Shrine, and we prayed together for the triplets and for their health. And I came back the next day, and he said, I noticed that there was something different about the employees. They weren't relating to me as this evil suit from Hong Kong. And he said, yeah, India is a very spiritual society, and you've just shown them that you're spiritual. So the triplets are now fantastic. They're in their 20s, super healthy, thanks to all of the prayers. And I'd show you a picture, but we need to move on. So this is highly interactive, and we're going to move very, very fast. So you're allowed to get out your mobile phones and scan this QR code, or go to slido.com and enter this code 1653199, or you can scan the QR code. Okay? And I'm going to ask a number of questions throughout my presentation, and then we're going to see whether or not what I have to say actually coincides with what other conferences and global statistics say. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, which generation do you identify with? And this is something very interesting that has come up in employee engagement surveys, is that organizations are now starting to measure their employee engagement surveys and a lot of the surveys they do related to AI by generation, because they're discovering that the generations are actually relating to AI very, very differently. They relate to employee engagement very differently. And then they have workforces, employee resource groups that talk to each other across the generations and figure out what does each generation need. So you have to move really, really fast, because I'm not going to give you an awful lot of time to respond here, but just to give you a sense of who's in the room. So we've got about 28 people on so far, 30 plus, so we're going to move on. I know there's more than you, more than 30 in there. You can scan the QR code, but we're going to move on. So most of you are Millennial Gen Y, some Gen X, and a few Gen Z. No baby boomers. And the next question is, so if you haven't joined yet, just scan the QR code on the top left, and you can still join the survey. So the next question is, to what degree are you worried about AI taking away your jobs? And I think this is going to be very, very interesting to hear what you have to say about this, because a year ago, and we read the headlines, people are very, very worried about AI taking away jobs. So the question is, to what degree are you worried about AI taking away jobs? Okay, to a great degree, to some degree, or not at all? I asked the same question of about 150 Hong Kong University students last week, and I can tell you what their answer is, and we'll compare your answer to their answer. Okay, so 76% of you have said to some degree, and about 19–20% of you have said not at all, and 2% to a great degree. Now, last week or 2 weeks ago in Hong Kong, when I asked this question of about 150 Hong Kong University students, about 75% of them were not afraid of AI taking away their jobs. And yet my sense from the conversation today is that India is a little bit further ahead in terms of implementing AI, but we will find out. So the next question is, AI won't replace humans, but humans using AI will. I have a view on this, so there is a correct answer. True or false? What do you think? True or false? Okay, so 84% of them, 85% of you say that that's true. You agree that AI won't replace humans, but humans using AI will. And that I would agree with that. I think that's absolutely going to be the case. And the big theme that we're hearing today at the conference is the importance of reskilling the workforce. Now, so my next slide, AI won't replace humans, but humans using AI will. This is attributed originally to Geoffrey Hinton. He's considered the godfather of AI and also a Nobel laureate. And that was his comment regarding the impact of AI when people started saying, oh, AI is going to take away all of our jobs. Not necessarily. I think it's going to take away jobs, but there's the opportunity for people to be reskilled into new jobs. So let's move on then into the global AI progress. Now, you can't really understand how you can lift off with AI based on some of the research that I've done if you don't understand where we're at. It's kind of like a map. If you don't know where you are on the map, then you can't get anywhere in terms of a destination. So as of late 2025, early 2026, 78% of companies globally report using AI in at least one business function, but this figure refers mainly to general adoption, and I'll say more about that in a couple of slides. Only 1 to 7% of companies excuse me, are considered to have mature or fully scaled AI implementations. So that's a long way for the rest of us to get to. Around 30 to 34% of organizations are in the developing stage. They've redesigned key processes around AI, and anywhere from 1 to 3 processes have been implemented. Nearly 2/3, 62% of organizations are still in the pilot purgatory phase, which is what I would call stage 1, stage 2, which I'll define for you in a moment. So that means that their AI projects are stuck in experimentation with limited specific siloed departments. High performers, the top 6% of companies that have successfully really scaled AI are seeing significant enterprise-wide benefits to the tune of $3.70 return for every dollar invested in generative AI, making it one of the highest ROI tech investments that some organizations or the business workforce has ever seen. So at least 41% of executives believe the biggest productivity boost to their business is investing in AI. So everything we're hearing today, AI is not coming, it's already here. Absolutely would agree with that. So what are the biggest barriers to AI adoption? So skills shortage, 50% of companies globally are seeing a major lack of in-house expertise to develop and implement and manage AI technologies. Poor ROA, so even though I quoted that $3.70 for every dollar that companies are investing, there's an inability to really make a strong business case and define clear uses of AI or justify the high financial costs initially. So a lot of companies are making that leap. There's cultural and organizational resistance. I don't know why the S and the Z keeps dropping out of that organizational. So a fear of change among employees, so they don't believe that, they don't share your sentiment that they're not afraid of AI so much. Lack of leadership vision and inertia hinder adoption, and we'll talk about inertia in a moment. Technical and ethical concerns, so we know that AI hallucinates, we know that there's bias in AI systems. One of the big 7 tech companies, major case study about a year or two ago, about 18 months ago, when they were called out for diversity hiring because the people that built the algorithm behind the recruiting system had no diversity on that team. An interesting comment earlier on the panel about the importance of diversity. Data and security challenges, I'll talk about that as well. Companies are struggling with data quality, accessibility, security risks, making it difficult to trust or effectively train AI models. And finally, lack of planning despite leaders being committed to AI adoption. So yes, leaders do commit to it, but then are they actually, are people then sitting down and planning out, mapping out the AI? So one of the things I've done, over several conferences, I've been asking this question about what stage is your company at, and I've developed an AI maturity model. And stage 1 is effectively AI awareness, and that's when a company would be maybe having lunch and learns and would starting to increase people's awareness around AI. Stage 2 is when a company moves, or employees move to advanced awareness. So typically in stage 2, you start to see an organization implementing an AI tool, but it's really for individual use, like introducing a Copilot, for example, to employees, and saying Copilot's now available to everybody. You can log in, you can get access to Copilot, you can use it for personal or professional use, and they provide guidelines on how to use AI. I'm going to give you the detail on the right in a moment, but I just want you to get the kind of idea of the model at first. Then stage 3 is when companies move to general business workflows. So general business workflows could be a workflow that could apply right across the AI. One of the most advanced workflows I've seen is, if you're familiar with payroll, then when you do monthly payroll, you do a payroll changes report, which tells you about a significant deviations in what's happening month to month in your payroll to see if there's any significant changes. A general business workflow would be, you can actually use AI to do that changes report for you, and it saves a massive amount of time. In fact, the amount of time that it saves the payroll team is about 90%. It's really substantial and significant. So those are general business workflows. Stage 4 is when you start getting into industry-specific workflows. So you might have workflows customized to the legal profession, or to the healthcare profession, or to customer service or specific functions in the organization. And then stage 5 is when an organization is working on proprietary AI innovation that would give them a competitive advantage in the marketplace, or so they could sell it, or something that actually would make them more competitive. So you think back to the beginning of AI, when legal law firms started aggregating the outcomes of cases. And if an example of doing that would have been stage 5 for the first law firms that implemented that type of approach, which happened a long time ago, 15, 18 years ago, before I left Juniper Networks. Juniper Networks was experiencing that in Silicon Valley, and said that if they didn't adopt AI, not democratize the way ChatGPT release has democratized AI, but if they didn't adopt AI based on their legal cases, they would lose competitive advantage in the marketplace. So this is the explanation on the right. I will make this PDF available for you afterwards, which just defines each category. But I want you to just think about awareness, advanced awareness, individual work integration, general workflows, industry-specific workflows, and proprietary AI innovation. So the question then is, if we go back to our Slido, what stage is your organization in or completed with adopting AI technology? So go back to the slide and ask yourself, are you at general awareness? Are you at advanced awareness? Are you starting to implement general functional workflows? Are you starting to implement industry-specific workflows, so something that's unique to your industry? For example, in the tech industry, some of the customer service AI that's being used is unique to the tech industry. Or stage 5, are you developing proprietary AI innovation? So something unique that no other company would be working on. And chatbots would probably be the beginning of stage 3. If there's a use of chatbots, it would be the beginning of stage 3. So we've got about 29 responses so far. I'll give you another 10 seconds. Okay, I think that was 10. You can still answer. So most of you are saying you're at stage 3. That's very, very interesting. You're implementing general functional workflows. So this is really interesting. So 23% of you are saying you're at stage 2. and stage 1, 20% of you. 18% are at stage 4, and 15% are at stage 5. So you're coming up with some kind of proprietary AI. So this is very, very interesting. Reason being is when I quoted earlier that about 78% of companies were stuck in that kind of purgatory phase of AI, that means that they're stuck at stage 2. And I want to show you the results of another next question is, what's the biggest barrier to driving AI adoption in your company? Select the top 2. You can select 2. So is it lack of leadership support, technical skill gaps, change management skill gaps, resistance to change, or lack of a clear strategy / planning? What is the biggest barrier to driving AI adoption? And then I'll show you some of the results that have come out of some of the other surveys and where companies are really struggling with moving up the AI maturity model. Okay, so about 30 of you responded. You can still answer. I'll just start putting the responses up here. So 28% are saying technical skill gaps, 24% change management skill gaps, lack of a clear strategy. Very interesting. So this data is consistent with other data that I've seen from other stakeholder groups. So let's move on and have a look at that data. And this is a bit of a very busy chart, but I want you to focus on stage 3. So what you can see here is that at stage, this is the results in 2024, and this is where, and this sample is about 175 companies. 175 companies from, some of them global, but most of them are from across APAC, anywhere from Japan and to India, with senior leaders with regional responsibilities. So what they said in 2024 is that they expected to be at 54% adoption in 2025, and in reality, they were at 19% in stage 1. In stage 2, they said in 2024, they were at 35%, and they expected to be at 64% in 2025. This should be 2025. They expected to be at 64% in 2025. So in 2024, they expect to be at 64% in 2025. They're at 68%. Very interesting. So they actually did 4% better than what they thought they were going to do. Now here, look at this box. This is probably the purgatory. This is probably the purgatory area. This is the jam up. So from what they said in 2024 is that they would be at 59% implementing stage 3 general workflows, and in reality, only 11% had successfully implemented general workflows. So that's a really striking. And if you actually go out there and research the success of companies implementing AI, you'll find that a lot of them get jammed from stage 2 to stage 3. Now, I would normally stop and I would ask you why you think that might be the case. But I'm just going to move on because I have a lot of slides to get through, and I know that we're running a little bit late on the timeline. The step between stage 2 and stage 3 is significant. What a lot of organizations are discovering, and this will not be new to some of you who are involved in digital transformation or implementing AI, is that moving into general business workflows and starting to disrupt those general business workflows is as tough and heavy lifting as digital transformation. I mean, in a way, you are conducting digital transformation. And so it's not surprising that these companies started getting stuck at stage 2 and not being able to move on to stage 3. And there's a certain amount of frustration in there. So anybody that can help organizations get from stage 2 to stage 3, if you have that skill set, that's a very valuable skill set. Even though you reported that a lot of you in the room are saying you're already at stage 3, and slightly more of you are at stage 4 and slightly more at stage 5. So you can see that this data is actually quite consistent with other data that's coming out from McKinsey and Gallup, that companies are jammed here between stage 2 and stage 3. So why would that be the case? So what is the biggest barrier to HR? So number one, based on these surveys, technical skill gaps. That's what you said was number one. I know this says 30, but that's just because this is a screenshot from one, but the results are consistent. So 46% technical skills gaps is a barrier. Number two is lack of a clear strategy. That's the lack of planning. And number three is resistance to change. So what is the biggest risk that I see out of some of the research that's come out? So the biggest risk is AI unhinged, like AI as a monster. And you can see, if you can see through the transparency there, you can see that the figures in the back are kind of looking at a bit of a monster on the right. Research indicates that a significant portion of companies are in stage 1 or 2 with a lack of governance policy for employees. Now, meanwhile, we can see that a significant number of companies a significant number of employees are using AI. And if companies don't provide tools to organizations or to their employees, then they will go out and they'll use it anyway. But are they using protected AI that's in a sandbox that's data protected? No. If you don't properly handle stage 1, stage 2, you then have a problem because employees are using AI anyway. They will just go out to ChatGPT or Poe.com or Gemini or DeepSeek, and they will just use it unhinged. And that creates a significant problem for organizations because the employees don't understand the dangers. And the dangers are things such as putting personal data into AI, putting proprietary information into AI. About 6 months after ChatGPT came out, there was a very famous case in Japan where a large tech company in Japan, it was a gaming company, took their code and dumped it into ChatGPT to see what had happened. But it wasn't paid ChatGPT, and it wasn't data-protected ChatGPT. It was just the general ChatGPT. And guess what happened? They went from closed source to open source in less than 12 hours. They put the data in one day and woke up the next morning and discovered that everybody had the code to their technology. Now, on average, only 40% of Indian organizations have implemented AI governance policies. So that is a huge risk. So the technology adoption curve, the more to the right you are, the more you've adopted AI. India, USA, China, and I added in Hong Kong here, are sort of on the right-hand side of the early majority. They're starting to move into the late majority, starting to adopt AI. And it's very interesting, actually, because India is actually known for being innovators, and when you look into the research and and you can see that India is pushing the envelope, that they're pushing the curve. But globally, if you look at all kind of companies and all usage across all countries, we're still here with early adopters and starting to move into early majority. So how do you lift off? Well, you have to bring employees with you through all stages together. One of the big risks is that companies might offer Copilot to employees in stage 2, for example, and they're also working on proprietary AI innovation, which will be a competitive advantage for them, but they don't tell anybody that they're working on that. And when they then start rolling it out to the employees, if they haven't worked on general business workflows, and they haven't worked on industry-specific workflows, the employees then say, what on earth is going on? What is this new technology that you're doing? You need to bring employees with you through the 5 stages. So I've seen this with a lot of cases where companies, they do minimal training in here. They don't offer a tool to the employees. The data protects how the employees uses it, or uses AI, and then meanwhile, there's a secret project happening somewhere. Everyone's afraid. You don't actually have to give away the secret. You can just tell people that you're working on it, and then bring employees with you through the other workflows. Ensure all change adoption stakeholders are represented in task forces. And at the last minute, I added in the socialize word. I think that's a great word, socialize. If you are implementing AI and AI changes, socialize those changes. But make sure that you socialize them across all change adoption stakeholders. So you saw the curve earlier. You have early adopters, late adopters, and your laggards. You want to socialize your ideas across all of those that change adoption curve. And not only that, but you want to make sure that those those people in the different stages of technology adoption are represented. So you will have laggards, you will have skeptics. So in addition to having IT, HR, finance, sales, the business, for example, in a group, as we heard earlier from the panel, working on a specific problem, you should also have your laggards and your early adopters working together, because your laggards will be the voice of skepticism, and the early adopters can help bring the laggards along. And in addition to that, another best practice is to create AI super users across the entire change adoption curve spectrum, including the laggards. If you can get your late adopters and your laggards to become super users of AI, who do you think they hang out with, and who do they interact with? They do socialize, and they do hang out with, and they do talk to other late adopters. Or when they experience them, they'll be able to share their issues and concerns that they're experiencing. You have to understand that the migration from stage 2, which is basically individual use of tools like Copilot, company enterprise-wide, and moving from there to stage 3 into workflows is the toughest migration. And if you don't make that is really where the heavy lifting happens in terms of implementing AI from the research that I have done. Another best practice is show, don't tell. So if you have a great AI idea, when you are training those super users, you train them to show how to use something, not actually tell people how to use something. Actually sit down and show them, hey, I did this really cool thing on Gemini or on Copilot. Let me show you how it worked. Or this is how I created a chatbot. And commit to retrain. Right now, the whole planet, I've researched this as well for the university students last week, the whole planet is in a no hire, no fire situation. Now, we are hearing about some layoffs here and there, but generally, we heard it from some of the speakers earlier, from Lance, people are very much, if people leave, they don't replace them maybe, but at the same time, people are reluctant to let people go. And in Hong Kong, for example, recruiting from 2024 to 2025 dropped by 50% because companies are so uncertain about the economy and the geopolitical environment right now. But commit to retrain and create pockets of change and celebrate, and then get your house in order. In other words, you need to have governance, because if you do not have governance, employees are going to hear about AI, they're going to get excited about AI, they will go out, they will use AI anyway, and that AI is not in a data-protected sandbox, and that will be really problematic for your organization. What the pandemic did demonstrate to us is that humans do have the capacity for change. This is research that McKinsey did in the very early days of the pandemic. They repeated this research several times. If you asked a CEO how quickly they could implement remote work, they would say, oh, it would take us 454 days to implement remote work. They did it in 10.5 days. That's a 43 times acceleration factor. The increased use of advanced technologies and operations, again, most CEOs said that'll take us 672 days to implement. They were actually implementing it in 26.5 days, 25%, 25 times acceleration factor. So humans do have the ability to change when you properly implement that change and understand the stages of change that you're going through. One last thing for HR people, you can't pour from an empty cup. So put on your own oxygen mask first. We heard this a little bit earlier. You have to look after yourself. Once you look after yourself, your cup's full, then you can look after others, you can look after your community, and you can look after global initiatives. So my last two questions on the Slido, is your cup full or empty? So very quickly go to the Slido and just answer that question. Do we have time for any questions? 1 minute for questions, okay. So you better answer this Slido quickly. So make sure you put on your own oxygen mask first. Look after yourself as an HR professional in order to be able to look after others. Really, really important to maintain that well-being perspective. And then last, just for me, let me know as we finish up here, to what extent did you gain value from today's presentation? Was it helpful? Was it insightful? Please feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Here's the QR code to my LinkedIn profile, and I thank you very much for your participation in the Slido and for listening today and for such a great turnout for the presentation. Thank you very much. How we can move from one to the next? Yeah.
Thank you.
So stage 2 is effectively when you're using AI at an individual level and a company is made available to the employees, something like Copilot. And in order to move to stage 3, you would look at the best, for example, you would look at the best practices, and most of the best practices are common sense best practices about diversity, making sure that all your functions are representative in your change initiatives, including across the AI adoption curve or across the technology adoption curve. So you have your, because what the risk that a lot of companies do is they only have early adopters in digital transformation or AI transformation. And then when the AI transformation arrives, the employees who are the laggards are saying, whoa, what's going on here? And that's when you really experience resistance to change. So make sure that your stakeholder groups, your task forces, include not only cross-functional representation, but representation across the technology adoption curve, which is the early adopters all the way to the late adopters. That would be my fast answer to that. Thank you very much.